you know. And one of the things that I think is important for you as a student or a seeker is to look around and make contact and connect with the teachers you can hear, with the teachers who make sense to you, you know, something you can work with. I refer people, you know, I mention names of teachers here because I know that they're people who have a workable way of explaining these things and can really help to shed light on these practices and teachings. I was listening, for example, I came across a video on YouTube on birth and death and dying, something like that, by James Lowe. James Lowe, I think, is an excellent teacher, and he's a therapist, he's a psychologist, right, from the UK. And the thing about him that I like is the same thing I like about myself as a teacher, and that is that it's not just presenting the strict non-dual teaching, right, concepts, right, that either, you know, that Eckhart Tolle or Rupert Spira or any of the teachers, you know, but in his case, he breaks it down in terms of explaining how all this shows up in the life of a person, you know, and how in the life of a person things appear to be a certain way, but then when you inquire into it, and what's good with James Lowe is he really does an inquiry in his talking. He'll say something and then he'll break it down and he'll look into it, and you can start to see how all this comes together and how all this works. It's easy to be who you are, but you don't find that out until you're being who you are, right? And when you're not being who you are and you're being who you thought you were, from the view of who you thought you were about who you are, after you entertain the concepts, you say, oh, that's not so easy, right? Yeah, that's true, it's not so easy, it's impossible. Because when you look at it from the viewpoint of a person, right, it's impossible. It's impossible for the person to be the self. It's impossible for the person to be the awareness, because the person is a convention. It's a construct that got put together. It doesn't exist anywhere other than your mind. It doesn't exist anywhere other than in the thinking activity. This is why there's so much attention being put on the idea of learning to be aware of your attention and move your attention out of the thinking activity. If you really do that, and you learn to do that when it's the best time to do it, which is when you're upset, okay? If you learn to do that and you train yourself to remember, when I'm upset, right, start paying specific attention to the thinking activity, right? And allow myself to recognize I am not doing that. I am not thinking those thoughts. Those thoughts are just happening. So that's the first thing. You have to break up your relationship with the thinking activity. You have to stop thinking that it's you thinking. That's just another thought, you see? So you have to see the thoughts not like they're coming from you, but like they're happening to you. That's the truth. It's always been true that they're happening to you, right? And you just have learned to think that you're thinking those thoughts, but that's not true. And the evidence speaks for itself. The evidence is the truth. And when you look at thoughts, and we've gone over this here, right? If you examine it, if you inquire into it, if you break it down, you can see it can't be you. The evidence is obvious. It can't be you. If you really look at it, it can't be you. All right, so if it's not you, stop relating to it as if it's you, and start relating to it like this is a voice that's speaking from the database of the brain and the mind, and it's using the orientation there, which is survival orientation, right? And that survival manifests itself in different ways when it comes to the personality. The survival of the physical body is part of it, no problem with that. We're not trying to change any of that, right? No. But then the survival of the personality becomes more of where the energy gets burned up, right, to protect yourself as if you're real, you see? You don't need a ghost doesn't need any protection, right? So you don't need to protect yourself. Who you are doesn't need any protection because it cannot be threatened. It cannot be hurt. So you have to learn to pay attention in such a way where you can watch how the personality is trying to be in control, how the personality is, trying to dominate and avoid domination, right? The personality is always relating to threats. What did you mean by that? When you're in a conversation, what do you mean by that, right? If you just watch your personality and watch how it's reacting, right? You can see that it's being threatened by things outside of itself that are different than it is. That's all it has to be. You're in relationship with somebody, they're different than you, right? And so what you do as a personality is your personality is always, the radar of the personality is always looking for threat all the time. It could be the tone of voice, it could be a certain word that gets used, it could be anything, it could be the color of the clothing somebody has on. This is all happening below the level of consciousness, right? And when you feel that threat, right, the system generates fear, right? When you feel that threat, the system generates fear, and then you start projecting onto the person or onto the situation, that it's dangerous, that you're endangering me. You are presenting me with a threat. You could hurt me. I have to do something to protect myself. I have to tell you to stop. I have to, attack you, right, to stop you. I have to escape from the situation, right? Look at human relationships. Isn't that what the behavior is all the time, right? Most of human relations behavior is either neutral, running away, or attacking. And the times that it's not that, and that there is a feeling of security and safety, right, are very limited times, like when you fall in love, right? See, when you fall in love, you imagine it's safe, right? But it's the same as it always was, right? But you're in love now. You're under the influence, right, of love, and the influence that you're under, you have to be under that influence to get you to have sex. It's an interesting thing to think about, but if it was up to humanity to procreate, we'd all be dead. Because humanity is too crazy, to do it consistently. It needs to be done consistently to procreate the race, right? And if it wasn't for the sex drive overriding all the rest of it and making you do it, right, you wouldn't do it. You wouldn't do it. So so when you're in that state, right, it's like, it seems like happiness is a possibility. It seems like love is a possibility, right? But it doesn't last because that is not being caused by you. It's being caused by your DNA. It's being caused by your genes. It's being caused by your brain. So it doesn't make a difference in the rest of your life. You have to make the difference. And the only way you can make a difference, the only way you can do anything is to know who you are. And the irony is, the paradox is, when you know who you are, you don't have to do anything. Right? Because when you know who you are, you know that who you are is the source that has manifested itself in a limited version of itself to operate in the world as a person, right? Still the source, right? But you see, when you then begin to ask questions like, well, why is it the way it is, right? That's like somebody working for Apple Computers that is a receptionist at the office, right? Answering questions that the CEO could only answer. Now, how are you or I going to know why this is going on like it is, right? As if we have a view that we can see it. We don't have a view. If you had a view that you could see it, you would see it. But you don't have a view that you could see it. You can only see your little piece of the action, right? And so through the teaching and practices, you learn not to waste energy on things like why. Don't worry about why, worry about what. Worry about whether you're happy, not whether you have infinite wisdom. Leave that up to God, right? The time will come when you will go back to having infinite wisdom, but that'll happen because you won't have a body anymore. I talk to different people who listen to these teachers, and it's often that I hear comments from them like, oh, I don't like that guy. Well, what did you like? He talked too slow. Yeah. Or he was Indian, he had an accent. I can't listen to that. It's because he has an accent. It's not clear what he's saying. Do you understand? That's clearly the person. That's clearly the person, right? And if that's what you're applying to the way you're experiencing other people, you have a small circle of friends, if any, right? And then they're under suspicion. See, when you get caught in a Chinese handcuff, you know what a Chinese handcuff is? Yeah. The first thing you have to do is try and get out of it, right? And then you'll realize, ooh, wait a minute, there must be something else to this, right? And then when you relax your finger, it comes right out. You see? It's the same thing. It's understandable that you will struggle. You can't help it. You don't know how to do this any other way. You start this process as a person and a personality. You hear the truth. The person wants enlightenment, right? How could you not want enlightenment, right? So you don't, only thing the person knows to do is to do something, right? And so you start doing things, and you're encouraged to do things, aren't you? Read the books, listen to the teachers, you're encouraged, right? But the thing you have to understand about this, and I hesitate to say this, I don't want to let you in on all my secrets, right? But the thing about this is that you have to encourage people to go to hell. Go completely to hell and get over with it, right? In other words, you have to encourage people to try and do the impossible. You as a person try and become what you really are. You can't help but do that because you don't know any other tricks. You don't know how not to do anything. You don't. You don't know how not to do anything. So if you hear this as something that isn't true now but could be true, the only way the brain can get that is, okay, then I got to do something, right? And you've been conditioned to operate that way, right? Just do it, Nike, right? You've been conditioned. These are the sacred aspects of being a human being, right? To be able to take action, make things happen, right? Take action, right? These are the sacred things. And to think is considered a sacred thing for a human being, right? You're taught to think. You're not thinking enough. Think this through. What do you think? Think about it more, right? So you're a thinking entity. You're a thinking entity and a doing entity, right? And so now you come into this process and you hear there's a possibility that can offer you freedom, happiness, really what you always wanted, to be at home in this life, to be at home in this body, to have some fun before the body drops, right? So you hear the possibility and you can't not want it. You can't not want it, right? Now, a lot of people hear the possibility and they say, nah, that can't be real. This is a con job, right? But if you give it some attention and you look at the evidence and you look at the literature and you do a little bit of experimentation, you get a taste, right? And then you realize, oh, no, this is real. I want this. And so you begin to move toward it and you begin to meditate and you begin to read and you begin to listen to teachers and you begin to try and apply it in your life, right? And it gets more and more frustrating and more confusing and more like, what the hell? It's not working. What do we, right? That's all on purpose, by the way, right?
That's what I'm going through, that frustration.
That's right. It's all on purpose. And that's why it's good to have a guide so they can tell you, don't worry, this is perfect. You're doing it perfectly. You're doing it perfectly. But I'm upset. I know you're doing it perfectly. See, because you have to get to the point of being frustrated and upset where you completely give up. I'm not going to try and do this anymore. I'm just going to relax. I may read and listen to teachers and practice meditation. Now watch. I may read and listen to teachers and practice meditation, but now the way I'm doing it is not to get something. I'm doing it because I'm interested in the possibility, but I'm not trying to get anywhere by doing it. Isn't it true that I have said in meditation, the only true practice of meditation is when you're doing it without the idea that you're doing it to get something? If after you do a practice, you come back and you say, oh, that wasn't a very good practice, or I've been practicing meditation for a year and I still have the same problems, right? That's because you're not practicing meditation. You're practicing trying to get what you want. That's what you're practicing, right? And meditation doesn't work like that, so it's not going to work, right? Meditation only works when you're simply meditating, meaning that you're paying attention, You're looking at the thinking activity, right? And then you move attention from the thinking activity to the awareness of the breath. Okay, that's what you're doing, right? You're not doing it in order to. You're not doing it so that you can get anything. No, you just do that. That's all you're doing, right? And you have to understand that the reason that this works is because meditation is consistent with the way things are. And you know, the way things are is that it's not going anywhere. The truth is, this is not going anywhere. If you could get that one thing, it would be gold. If you could get that one thing, it would really enhance your ability to experience the truth. This is not going anywhere. A moment is the only truth, right? The now, right? The power of now, right? The moment is the only truth. That's the only real thing. There is no real future and no real past, right? So that means that the moment is your life. That's your whole life. This is your whole life. There's nothing but this. This is your whole life. This is your whole life. And it's not going anywhere. So if you stop trying to get somewhere and be here where it is, you'll start experiencing life. That's the problem, because you see what happens is you get conditioned and you get indoctrinated and you get into these belief systems, right? In which you think this is going somewhere, and you got to have a good work ethic, and you got to think a lot, and you got to take a lot of actions in order to get it all to work, right? But that's the illusion. It's not going anywhere. And you can relax and begin to be aware of what's happening right now. And what's happening right now is not a concept. What's happening right now is not what you think about it. Do you understand? That's the problem, because you think that what you think is what's true. No, it's not. You think that what you think is what's true. And one of the things you think is that you're a physical body and you're a personality, and that gets infused with agreement, that gets infused with it being true, because everybody's playing that game, right? Yeah, so you would even start to be looked at like you're weird, right? Because you're no longer flying with the flock, you know? So you do have to be willing to take responsibility for your life as an individual in doing this work, and not let the general reality that everybody's involved with be your reality. You've got to come out of that. You've got to start to see things as they are. You have to understand that a thought is not anything other than a thought. And when you move your attention from the thought activity to the awareness of the body breathing, you're coming out of the problem. Because in that thinking activity is where you're generating an illusion about yourself and about the world. In that thinking activity is where there's an illusion being generated all the time about yourself and about the world. And you're living in that illusion. That's why they say you're dreaming. It's like a dream. You're living in the illusion that's created by the concepts, by the ideas, by the thoughts you have, right? You're living in that world, right? And that world's not real. It's not real. If you're living in an illusion, you're delusional. It's not real. Now, you don't have to do, now, the first thing the personality wants to do is change it, right? I want to get it right. I don't want to live in that world. I want to change it. I want to stop living in that world. I want to control it, right? That won't work. That won't work. It doesn't need to change. It has to be that way. In the world of a person, there has to be thinking. In the world of a person, there has to be time, right? It has to be that way, right? But you can see that it's not true. That's all it takes. Just to see that an illusion is an illusion, to see that a mirage is a mirage. If you see a mirage as a mirage, you're not going to try and get any water. If you see that an illusion is an illusion, you're not going to identify with it and think that it's real and that it's you and that it can take you somewhere, it can get you anywhere. It can't get you anywhere. So this is, you know, the reality of it is that the realization of the truth, the experience of the truth, not conceptual, but the experience of the truth, which is not conceptual, right, does not involve the need to change anything or do anything. And when you're practicing meditation, that's what you're practicing, not changing anything and not doing anything. You're just sitting there. You're just sitting there. You're being. You're being. And when you're being, the experience of being is non-conceptual. You can't, if I ask you, you know, if you tell me what you are as awareness, we use these concepts, right, to talk, right? But if you tell me that your awareness or your consciousness, right, and then I say to you, okay, well, what is that, right? You're not going to be able to answer that question, right, because it's non-conceptual, right? And you've been living in a conceptual world, right? If you look out there, what you see is trees, right? Yeah, because you've learned that that's what they are. You learned the name for that, and then just like everybody else, you thought that was the name. You thought that was a tree. So you've never seen it. You may have seen it, in the beginning before you got a word, but after you got a word, it changed from what it was to the word. And then it becomes a tree. But then, so from that point on, you never see that. You see a tree. Is that a tree? In another language, it's called something else. Okay? So what this is about is getting to the truth. The truth is that's not a tree. Oh, that's interesting. Now I can look at that and be amazed. Be amazed. What is that? If you really get into trees and as you're riding around or as you're walking, you look at trees, it's like, wow, look at that. What is that? That's the experience of coming in contact with reality. That's the experience of coming in contact with the truth. And then, if you take that same way of understanding the truth about trees and turn it on you, what is that? Same question. What am I? I don't know. This is pretty cool. I don't know what I am, but I'm here. I don't know what I am, but I'm here. Wow, this is interesting. What's going on here? See, it's like the world becomes a fresh. It's new all the time, right? It's new all the time because you're no longer assuming you know anything. Then you become awake and open and receptive and making contact with reality, right? Because if you're in contact with reality, you know you don't know. So the fact that you have words for it doesn't get in the way. You know you don't know who you are. So the fact that you think you know who you are doesn't become a problem because you know you don't know who you are, and you can experience your life in a very powerful, fulfilling way by staying in contact with the truth that you don't know who you are, and you don't know who other people are either. All you know is what you put together about who you think they are. It's a very interesting thing. You think you know you, and you think you know other people, and you don't know either one. And if you can come out of the dream, if you can come out of the illusion about it, life gets exciting. Because even the people that you've been living with for years, you don't know. You can't know. You can't know because there's no limit to the truth of what they are. The only thing you know about them is the concepts that you have put together about them that you call what you know about them. And one of my teachers had a great way of talking about this. He called the Tranquilized Obviousness. Right? You think you know who you think you know who you are like it's obvious, right? And you're sleeping about it. That's tranquilized. See, you can relax with the idea that you think you know who you are, even though it's not true. That's tranquilized obviousness. And the same thing is true about other people. You think you know who other people are, and it's not true. And so you relate to who you think they are. And you're having a relationship between who you think you are and who you think they are. Good luck with that. Doesn't work very well, right? Why? Because who you think you are is unstable and unreal. And that's the basis from which you're having a relationship. Good luck with that. And it's not necessary because you can come to see the truth of yourself, right? And then the personality that you have will still be playing in front, right? Will still be playing, because you got to have a form. You can't be awareness in the world, right? Personality will still be playing in front, but now you have something to say about the script, right? You're not just playing the role of the character that you are with the story that you're in, the drama, right? But now when you see it for what it is, you now become the producer and director too. Why? Because you can change your conditioning in such a way, right, where you can actually generate who you're being. Instead of being stuck with who you think you are, you can cause who you are. You can generate who you're being. You can be anyway. You don't have to be stuck with the ways that the person that you think you are is. You can be anyway. Don't you think that'd be pretty powerful, that you can be anyway? The brain's willing to make 100 mistakes for one true situation. It's willing to misperceive things around you that really cannot harm you at all, right? But through its conditioning, right, it will react as if it can harm you, right? And it can be wrong 99 times, right? But that's okay, because the one time that it's right, you survived. It's a radar operation, right? It's a radar operation, and the radar is running all the time, and it's programmed to detect any threats to the physical body, right? But not just that, but threats to who you think you are. And since who you think you are isn't real, you're protecting a ghost. But the brain doesn't know that. It's a machine. It's a program that's running, right? And so it's scanning all the time. It's scanning all the time for threats, right? But it's also scanning for things you want, right? So what gets your attention and keeps your attention? Things that are associated with what you want, or things that are associated with what you don't want. That's the game. That's the game of the mind, right? It's always trying to keep your attention on what you want and what you can get through your actions, or pay attention to what you don't want because it's a threat. You can just watch it. If you start paying attention to attention, you'll see what I'm talking about. If you start watching TV and you start paying attention to attention, you'll see how TV works. When the commercials come on, right? It's a beautiful thing from a psychologist's point of view. To watch a Progressive insurance commercial, right? The commercial has nothing to do with car insurance. Nothing to do with it, right? But it gets your attention. Get your attention. And once it has your attention, it shows you the word Progressive. Done. Done. Because you are an association machine, right? So now the word Progressive and insurance is in your head, right? Below the level of consciousness, right? And then you get something in the mail from Progressive and it says, guaranteed that you will not pay more than this for your car insurance, right? That together with the thing in your mind, the next thing you know, you're on the phone. It's all mechanical. Yeah. The news works the way it is because fear is a motivator. The news is designed to keep you afraid. And they're really making it into a fine art. I mean, if you look at the news and you really pay attention to like what they're trying to, the reaction they're trying to get from you, they even talk in threatening ways. And not only that, even the weather, right? Even the weather. On national news now, the weather is a threatening piece of news every night. Every night Al Roker gets up there and says, 2 million people are under threat tonight. The weather didn't used to be that way. They just told you the weather. Now they tell you you're threatened by the weather. And every night we're going to tell you what the threat is and whether you're in the line of the threat. And then he says, and in the Northeast, they're going to get a lot of rain. But if you look at the coloration on the map, 0.5 inch of rain. That's not a lot of rain, right? But his job is to make it seem bigger than that. So you keep you afraid. And you're awake. You can enjoy anything, anywhere, anytime, including your own death. Because it's a movie. That's all. It's a movie. Now I know I know if I say something like that, your mind says, I don't know about that. Right? I don't know about that. Yeah, because you're looking at it from inside the illusion. Yeah. Death doesn't even exist. When you get to the truth of it, death doesn't even really exist. How can you be afraid of something that doesn't exist? Well, I don't understand that. I know. That's why you have to study these things. And there are concepts that can talk to you about this, that can show you what that means, that death doesn't exist. And that helps to motivate you to do the practice and helps to motivate you to do the teaching so you can come out of the horror show that most people consider life to be. And then what's left? The kingdom of heaven on earth. Kingdom of heaven on earth. So my word to you is stay motivated. Don't let the voice in your head talk you out of this. I know it can be frustrating. I know that sometimes you feel lost. I know that it can be confusing. That's just part of the trip. That's part of the trip. But if you stay with it in time, Through the practice of meditation, the mind will start to calm down. Then you'll be able to see more, things will be clearer, right? And you'll be able to operate in relationship to the truth and in relationship to reality instead of continuing to try and get a nightmare to work.